أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قالوا يا شعيب أصلاتك تأمرك أن نعبد ما يعبد آباؤنا أو أن نفعل في أموالنا ما نشاء إنك لأنت الحليم الرشيد صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات اللهم صل على محمد. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, a second loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We began yesterday discussing the story of Shu'ayb, this prophet of God who's mentioned 11 times in the stories of, or in the verses of the Quran. A prophet who we struggle a bit to identify in the other holy scriptures. Some have identified him with this character by the name of Jethro in the Bible, and other scholars have doubted this correlation. Nonetheless, the Quran tells us about the people of Shu'ayb himself and the people of Madian, and the people who are given multiple names. Some have called them, in some verses refer to these people as the people of Madian, because this is the place where they used to live. And you will find other verses of the Quran refer to the same group of people as Ashabul Aikah, the people of the wood, because in narrations it is said that they used to worship a tree that they found in their area. And hence they were also given the title of Ashabul Aikah. Nonetheless, the Quran tells us the people of Shu'ayb had one major issue. They had one fundamental issue out of all of the other issues that they had. And that one fundamental issue, beyond them worshipping a tree and idol worshipping, was the way they interacted with others in their business dealings and their business transactions. They had a habit of cheating people out of their wealth because of the position that they were given. And in terms of their geography, they lived in an area where many caravans used to come and go. And because of that, they were in a prime position to sell and buy different items and merchandise. And part of that selling and buying was that they used to cheat people out of their wealth. If they were selling, then they would give less than what they had actually committed to. And if they were buying, then they would be willing to take more, or would try to take more from the person who was going to give them. And so Shu'ayb came to them and said, listen, I am afraid for you. إِنِّي أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ مُحِيطٍ. I am afraid that God's punishment will come your way. His people, of course, did not listen to him, and this is where we ended our discussion yesterday. Tonight, inshallah, we'll continue with our discussion by posing the following questions. Number one, why were the people of Shu'ayb so surprised that if Shu'ayb is a person of faith, that he doesn't just go and practice his faith in the corner of his house or the corner of his room. Rather, he finds his faith pushing him to intervene in the corruption that he finds within society. And what lessons can we learn from this? Number two, why would Shu'ayb constantly emphasize to his people that if he's telling them what to do or telling them what not to do, that he has no personal gain to benefit from? And that he's only doing this to give them or to guide them to the right path. And what lessons can we learn from this step of what Shu'ayb was doing? Number three, what suggestion did Shu'ayb make to his people that all of the other great prophets of God always made to their people. Number 4, what lesson can we learn from the mentality of the people of Shu'ayb, who constantly asked Shu'ayb to send God's punishment on them, and a people who would not obey God unless and only if something bad were to happen in their life. Other than that, they wouldn't have obeyed God. Number 5, when the people of Shu'ayb told him that they would stone him, that if he didn't leave his people alone, that they would get rid of him, and that the only thing that is stopping them from doing this is the tribe of Shu'ayb. What did Shu'ayb tell them about how they care more about what his tribe thinks about what they're doing than thinking about what God thinks about what they are doing? And number 6, and finally, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teach us in Surah Al-A'raf? After telling us the story of all of these great prophets, what does he tell us about how he treated each and every one of these tribes and the fundamental principles that hold true in the stories of all of these great prophets of God? Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into these 6 questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. The people of Shu'ayb then came to him with the next objection. قَالُوا يَا شُعَيْبْ أَصَلَاتُكَ تَأْمُرُكَ أَن نَعْبُدَ مَا يَعْبُدُ آبَاؤُنَا. We're confused, Shu'ayb. What are you confused about? He said, we're confused because it doesn't make sense to us. We understand you're a man of faith. This we understand. But is it your salat that pushes you to then come and start trying to tell us within society that what we're doing is wrong? Meaning they were confused on this correlation of if you're a person of faith, what do you have to do with society? Go practice your faith in the, in the corner of your house, yes, in the privacy of your home. Faith is something personal. It has nothing to do with how you interact with other people, how you speak to other people, so on and so forth. As-salatuka ta'muruka. Your salat tells you to come and tell us these kinds of things. We have corruption in society. What does that have to do with you? You're a person of faith. Go pray. So the people of Shu'ayb could not understand that if you are a person of faith, then you have to care what happens within society. There's boundaries to it, there's ways to approach it, but at the end of the day, you care for the society that you live in. And more than you care for the greater society that you live in, you have to care for your own family. Many times you will find, because we have 2 extremes in this area, people who want to tell everybody else what to do 24/7, this is one extreme. Then we have the other extreme, and this other extreme is becoming prevalent in our younger generation. It's becoming a thing. The other extreme is, just mind your own business. Don't tell me what to do. You don't know. You're not the judge. Only God can judge me. Okay, only God can judge you. Didn't God, the judge himself, say you're supposed to pray your salat? No, only God can judge me. Baba, the judge spoke himself. He said you have to pray. He said you have to fast. Yes, at the end of the day, final judgment, heaven, hell, so on and so forth. Yes, this is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes? But the fact that what you're doing is wrong, the judge himself already said this. He already said you're not supposed to dress this way. He already said you're not supposed to eat this food. Now you come and say, no, only God can speak to me. Well, God already spoke to you. This is the other extreme. And Shu'ayb was neither of these. Shu'ayb was one who cared more about himself and his family, and then beyond that, he also cared about what happened in society. Yes, he wasn't going around and forcing other people to do as he does, because multiple times in his story he says, وَمَا أَنَا عَلَيْكُمْ بِحَفِيظٍ. I'm not your guardian, I'm not your bodyguard, I'm not there to watch you 24/7. But I do have a responsibility to tell you what you're doing is wrong. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put this responsibility on your shoulder and my shoulder when it comes to our friends and our relatives and those that we have a relationship with that can bear this level of advice. Sometimes your relationship with another person cannot bear this level of advice. Your relationship with that person is so minimal. If you were to go to them and say, I don't think this thing you're doing is right, they're like, who are you? So please move on with your life. And sometimes your relationship is strong enough that you can go to that person because you have a relationship. And you say, you know what, I don't agree with this. I don't think it's a good idea. And when your relationship is strong enough, you are not supposed to mind your own business. This idea of just mind your own business. Just do your own thing. Never ever tell me anything about anything. This is not part of Islam. I'm sorry. It's not part of Amr bil Ma'ruf. It's not part of enjoining the good. It's also not part of enjoining good and forbidding the evil to walk up to some random person and say, you should do this, you should do that. You don't have a relationship with this person. This person doesn't care at all what you have to say about these issues. If you have a relationship, a friend, a mother, a father, a child, whatever the case might be, if your relationship can carry that advice, then yeah, you have that responsibility. So Shu'ayb was teaching us that, listen, what I do in the corner of my house, in the privacy of my home, that same salat is what pushes me to come and do what? To have an impact on society. Because Shu'ayb didn't believe in a faith that you only do in the privacy of your home and then it doesn't impact the way you deal with people. That's not the religion that Shu'ayb had, and it most definitely is not the religion that our Prophet brought to us. No, the religion you have, it has two aspects to it. It has an inward aspect, it has an outward aspect. And Islam wants both of these from us. There's a lot of people in the world, a lot of Muslims, who only emphasize the inward aspect. What is the inward aspect? These amal and this salat and this fasting and all of this kind of stuff. Great. These are all important in Islam. And then there are those, they only emphasize what? The outward aspect. Be kind, be nice, be charitable, be fair, and so on and so forth. And Islam is neither of these by themselves. Islam is both of these together. That's what Islam wants. Don't sit there and say, I'm a very charitable person, so, this salat thing and this fasting from morning to dawn and, dawn to dusk and all of this stuff doesn't really matter for me. Well, then you're ignoring like half of the faith. And don't sit there and say, the only thing that matters to me is this amal. And then when I go home, I'm going to have this terrible akhlaq and I'm going to yell and I'm going to backbite. Neither of these are Islam. And what is becoming more and more and growing in our younger generation more and more is that first approach, which is what? Be kind, be generous, be charitable, but in your day-to-day life, how you dress, how you walk, how you talk, what you eat, your salat, this stuff doesn't matter. This is becoming a trend. It doesn't matter you dress properly or not. It doesn't matter you did the salat or not. It doesn't matter you went by the rules of fasting or not. This stuff doesn't matter. God only looks at your heart. If your heart is pure, then you're good to go. If that was what Islam wanted us to do, then technically we wouldn't have even needed Islam, because being charitable, having good akhlaq, things of that nature are universal principles. You don't even have to be Muslim to understand these things. What greater injustice can you do to Islam than to say, yes, Islam just came to say be kind to people and that's it. Baba, I don't need Islam to tell me to be kind to people. If you need Islam to come and tell you to be kind to people, then you have something wrong with you. We all understand fundamentally you're supposed to be kind to people. Atheists understand this better than you and I understand this. So Islam came with a full system. Don't rob Islam of half of it. Islam came with a full system, yes. Being kind and being nice is very important parts of Islam. But don't do this injustice to Islam. That's the only thing that God looks at. And then you'll see people, especially on social media, they'll take one hadith they heard where the Prophet said, listen to your heart, for example. And then they'll say, yes, it's all about your heart. If it was about your heart, na'udhu billah, God forbid, was Imam Sadiq had nothing better to do in his life than to sit down and tell you when you go to for Hajj, do it based on these rules. And when you're going to do your dhabiha, do it based on these rules. And when you're going to pray, do it based on these rules, yes? And when you're fasting and when you're getting married. And what are all these rules for? Imam Sadiq had nothing better to do in his life. He just had extra time sitting there. Say, yeah, here's a bunch of rules, by the way. And by the way, none of these rules matter because God only looks at your heart at the end of the day. How does this logic make any sense to us? Yes, the pureness of the heart lies at the core of Islam. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also has an expectation for us to follow these rules. These two are complementary towards one another. They're not contradictory towards one another. Recite salawat, please. And of course, out of everything that Shu'ayb was doing, they also pointed out what out of everything that he was doing, his salat. So you find salat was a thing, at least from the time of Shu'ayb. We already mentioned from the time of Nuh, salat was a thing. So this is the legacy of all of the prophets of God. This 5 times a day you and I pray. This is a legacy that's been passed on, prophet after prophet after prophet. It's very important. Out of everything that Shu'ayb was doing, they said what? As-salatuka. This means what? The icon of the faith of Shu'ayb to them was what? Was his salat. This is the importance of salat. So Shu'ayb came back to them. He said, listen, these are excuses you guys are bringing up. God has already given me a sign that I'm a prophet of God. You are to obey me. If God has given me a knowledge and he's giving me a sign that I'm a prophet for you, the rest of this is excuses that you're coming up. But in the way that he spoke to his people, he was very, very careful not to evoke anger within the emotions of his people. Shu'ayb was a master at this. He did this very, very well. Did this in a very beautiful way. So when you're a prophet of God and you have to draw a line, the natural reaction of people is, oh my God, did you see what he said? He said you have to pray. He said you have to do this. You have to do that. Yes? It draws up and evokes emotions within the other side, objection within the other side. And Shu'ayb said a line, it's a lesson for all of us. He said, my people, if I come to you and I tell you to do this stuff, don't take it personally. I have no personal gain here. He said, وَيَا قَوْمِ لَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شِقَاقِي. Don't let the fact that you dislike me end up pushing you towards the fate of Nuh and Thamud and Hud and all of the other tribes that came before you. What was he saying? He's saying, listen, it's not about me. I'm a nobody. I have to answer to God myself. But don't let this personal relationship you and I have get in the way and then lead to you going in the wrong direction. So what was Shu'ayb teaching you and I? That when you tell someone else to do something or to not do something, someone who you have a relationship with, yes, not some random person you walk up to in the middle of nowhere. This is a person you have a relationship with. He was saying you make it clear to them that this is not some personal game I'm playing with you. This is not because I want to feel good about this. Many times when people tell others, this is what you're not supposed to be doing, it's because deep down, they don't like the idea that this guy gets to do it and he doesn't get to do it. Deep down, he's thinking, you shouldn't do this. This is haram, because deep down, he wants to be involved in that sin. But he can't. So that's what's pushing him to go and tell other people, no, you're not supposed to do this. Is it because he's worried about that person? No, he's not worried about that person. He doesn't care about that person. What is it? I want to be able to do this too, but I can't, so you shouldn't be able to do it either. See, it's a very delicate thing, yes? He said, when you come, don't let my relationship with you be the criteria. The criteria is God doesn't want you to do this. So if you dislike me, don't let that push you in the wrong way. Don't take it personally. I have nothing to gain here. Okay, this is what he came to his people. His people continued to disobey. He said, people, I have a suggestion for you. What is a suggestion? He put a suggestion in front of them that every other prophet put in front of his people. None of these prophets came to their people and said, you guys are sinners, and I'm not talking to you anymore. None of them did that. You know what every single one of them did do? Every single one of them came and said, listen, come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have this opportunity. Take the easy way out. The easy way out is stop being an enemy of God. Just come back to Allah and say, Ya Allah, I have shortcomings. I have things I know I'm not supposed to be doing. I fall short, I'm weak. Oh Allah, I repent to you. Is that so difficult for you to do? So he came to his people. He said, وَاسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ ثُمَّ تُوبُوا إِلَيْهِ. Repent to your Lord and come back to Him. إِنَّ رَبِّي رَحِيمٌ وَدُودٌ. Because my Lord, He's merciful and He's loving. If you come back, He'll take you back. There's nothing. And this is exactly what every other prophet said. What is Nuh saying to his people? Nuh said, فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا. I told my people, come back. He's very forgiving. Yes. What did Salih say? Salih said, come back to the right path, because if you come back, inna Rabbi qaribun mujib. My Lord is close, He'll respond to you, He'll do. Every prophet of God came and said, just take the easy way out. Why are you making your life more difficult? The people of Shu'ayb, they wanted to continue on this path. Recite salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So they came to him with the next objection. قالوا يا شعيب. First of all, ما نفقه كثيرا مما تقول. When you talk, we don't really understand what you're saying. They understood, but this was their excuse. I mean, we don't understand all this. You keep talking about this next world, and then God is going to resurrect us and all that. I don't know about that. Most of what you say doesn't really register with us. Okay? وَإِنَّا لَنَرَاكَ فِينَا ضَعِيفًا. But here's the deal. They were making it very clear to Shu'ayb that, listen, like, we're really starting to have problems now. وَإِنَّا لَنَرَاكَ فِينَا ضَعِيفًا. Here's the thing. You're not powerful. You don't have a high social status. You're not a strong person yourself. You don't have wealth. You don't have authority. You don't have any of this stuff. Okay? وَلَوْلَا رَحْتُكَ. If it wasn't for your tribe, لَرَجَمْنَاكَ. We would have stoned you already. But because of your people, we're not going to do that. وَمَا أَنْتَ عَلَيْنَا بِعَزِيزٍ. And essentially they were threatening him indirectly. They said, and by the way, you're not too important for us. If we want to get rid of you, we'll just get rid of you. It's like, we're having mercy on you right now. But if we want to get rid of you, we will get rid of you. Okay, what did Shu'ayb respond to them? Very beautiful response. قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ. He said, my people, أَرَهْتِي أَعَزُّ عَلَيْكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ. He said, you won't stone me because you're afraid of my people. And then the creator of my people is telling you to be fearful of him. You don't care about what God thinks. You care about what my people will think about what you're going to do. You care more about what people think about what you're going to do than you think about what God is going to think about what you do. He said, thank you, but no thank you. That's what he said. You say you're not going to do this because you feel like if you were to do this, your tribe or my tribe will create problems for you. Well, God is telling you his punishment is going to come, but you guys don't care about that. Like, that's not going to happen. The only thing you care about is what other people will think about what you're going to do. And this is what you and I do as well. And this is why scholars have a beautiful line. Yes, if you ever have arrogance in your heart, just remember this one line. They have a beautiful line. They say that we as human beings, we care so little about God that many of the sins that we commit, if there was a 10-year-old kid running around when we were doing that, it would stop us from doing it. If there was a kid who was in our presence, we wouldn't be committing that sin. Because we'd look at him like, in front of him? No. This is not right. This is not correct. And then in front of God, yeah, no problem. And so the scholars say, you and I speak of myself, we care less about God than we were to care about a young child. This is how we look at God. And this is why the narration says, powerful narration. The narration says, if you ever want to know where you stand in the eyes of God, look at where God stands in your eyes. It's very beautiful, very beautiful. So when that sin pops up, do you tell yourself, oh no, God is watching me? At least, is it a dilemma at the very least? Is it, oh no, he's watching me, I don't want to do this, so on and so forth. Because if that's what you're doing, well then God cares about you to that extent as well. And he looks at you, maybe he wants to send punishment. He says, no, maybe I shouldn't do this. This is my servant, so on and so forth. Of course, God's mercy on us is even more than this. But this is the measuring stick Ahlul Bayt gave us. You want to know where you stand in the eyes of God? Where does God stand in your eyes? How much do you care about what God has to say? And that is how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will care in return. He cares more than that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes has to show us that if we ask him for something, he may not give it to us so that we'll correct things. This is part of his mercy. Yeah, it's like a parent will do something. This is part of his mercy. So Shu'ayb told his people, "Arahdi a'azzu alaykum min Allah." You care about my people more than you care about God. You won't do it because you know that my tribe will come after you, but you have no problem doing it in front of God, and you're not even afraid of God's punishment at all. God will come after us. It's not a big deal. Who cares? They continued. They said, and this is the last one, they said, you know what, Shu'ayb, send God's punishment. We're done with you. فَأَسْقِطْ عَلَيْنَا كِسَفًا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. Send our punishment from the heavens. This was the way they were mocking him. Now hold on to this line, because when their punishment came, it came from the heavens. This is exactly what happened to them. So they said, فَأَسْقِطْ عَلَيْنَا كِسَفًا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. Shu'ayb, put an end to it. You keep saying punishment is going to come. فَأْتِنَا بِمَا تَعِدُنَا. Bring us what you keep telling us is going to happen. And Shu'ayb said, no, I can't do that either. That's in the hands of God. Whenever he wants to send punishment, he'll send punishment. But here we want to pause. This is very important because you and I have this mentality a lot of times. The mentality of the people of Shu'ayb was what? Listen, if what we're doing is so wrong, why doesn't this punishment come? If the punishment doesn't come, that means what we're doing is not a big deal. This was their mentality. And this is the mentality you and I have as well. Because you and I do sins, we commit sins, and then we look at our life, we're like, oh, nothing happened. You see? I broke her heart, but well, nothing happened. Life went on. And then the Quran says, no, a lot of things changed around you. The angels changed around you. They spoke to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saw your deeds, all of this kind of stuff. And we say, no, but I didn't see any punishment coming from the skies. So people used to come to the Prophet. They used to sit in his circle. They used to, the moment they head out, they used to make fun of him. And then when they were heading out, they were saying, why doesn't God punish us? And God is saying, I'm giving you time to come back. But you and I don't get the memo. We don't understand the message. We say, no, if it was a problem, punishment would have come. The punishment didn't come, so he must be fine with it. It's okay. And this mentality, the problem with it is what? The problem with it is that you will only fix things when it's too late. Because you will only fix things when the punishment actually comes. Well, when the punishment actually comes, it's too late. The punishment actually came. This is the problem with it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every now and then will throw smaller stones and problems in our lives. But the ultimate punishment, He doesn't bring it. Because if He brings that, it's too late. So you and I sit there, and you've seen this, sometimes you'll see these stories you will hear, yes? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been telling this person to pray for the past 50 years of his life, 30 years of life, 20 years, however old, yes? This guy doesn't care at all. But now he went one day, he got into an accident, for example. Then he comes back and says, oh, did you see? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking to me. I skipped my salat that day, and then I had an accident. And God is like, I've been telling you for 50 years to pray. But his mentality is what? No, I have to see something happen. Both on the bad side and the good side. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, listen, when you see something haram, if you don't look at it and you put your head down, the narration says, when you put your head down, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards you by the number of the stars in the heavens. Okay, this is a number we don't even know. Like astronomers don't even know this number, yes? Okay, but he puts his head down and he walks around, he's like, I didn't see anything happen. Now, what happens if he doesn't look at something haram, he does something good, right? And then the next day he passes his test, his exam. Then he says, oh, you see what happened? Baba, God was telling you for years already. You put your fingers in your ears, you ignore what he's telling you. Then when you see something physical, material, then you're like, oh, you see, God was trying to speak to me. God was trying to speak to you in the Quran already. He already told you this is good, this makes me happy. He already told you this one is a sin, don't do it. But you and I ignore him until we see some miracle, some mu'jiza, something in the skies and the heavens. I was driving and then lightning hit. So you see, God is not happy with what I was doing. Didn't God already tell you if he was happy or not with what he was doing? Like every time God wants to tell you if he's happy or not, he has to send lightning in your life? Every time he wants to tell you that you're a good person, you have to see some angels? This is not how it works. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might sometimes send signs to someone who's not exposed to the religion at all, for example. Yes? This person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's never received the initial message of God. So yes, God through some mysterious way might send him some signs, some miracles, so on and so forth. That's a different scenario. But you and I, that's already been exposed to God's message for years and years. And God has been telling you, pray, 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 pray. And then you don't. And then when you see something happen, you say, oh, look, he's talking to me. Baba, he's been talking to you a long time. He's been talking to me a long time. This was the mentality of the people of Shu'ayb. Shu'ayb, we're going to continue with our life. If it's such a problem, why doesn't he send the punishment? Well, if he sends the punishment, then it's game over. There's no more opportunity for you all to come back to the right path. This is what Shu'ayb told them. They came back to Shu'ayb. They said, Shu'ayb, here's the thing. Final straw. You have to leave us. We're going to kick you out. If you don't leave, we're going to kill you. And Shu'ayb said, you know what? This was the last step. So he came to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, my Allah, oh Allah, iftah bayni wa bayna qawmi. Ya Allah, you judge between us and our people. Because as long as you haven't kicked the Prophet out, God is not going to send punishment on that city. Once you kick the Prophet out, meaning you separate the lines between good and evil fully, then the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to come. So then that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did. That's why the verses of the Quran tell our Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, we don't send punishment as long as you are amongst them. Meaning as long as they have that amount of decency, that you are still, if you were to ever leave them, our punishment would come. They said, Shu'ayb, you have to leave us. And Shu'ayb started to leave with that group of believers who had believed in him. And he started to head out. And then the Quran says, فَأَخَذَهُمْ عَذَابُ يَوْمِ الظُّلَّةِ. Then all of a sudden, the same place that they used to mock, the same place they used to say, send our punishment from the skies, then they saw this clouds started to gather in the skies. And the Quran says they heard this loud cry, this loud blast and sound in the skies and an earthquake on the ground, and they were immediately gone. And then the Quran says, الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا شُعَيْبًا كَأَن لَمْ يَغْنَوْا فِيهَا. The people who rejected the message of Shu'ayb, we got rid of them. It's almost as if they never even lived. الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا شُعَيْبًا كَانُوا هُمُ الْخَاسِرِينَ. They lost at the end of the day. And so the Quran wraps up for us the principles that are going to determine how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deals with the people, depending on whether they are obedient or disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the end of Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling all of these stories, then he gets into these principles. He says, listen, there's some fundamental underlying principles to all of the stories of all of these prophets. And this is how it goes. First, when you disobey God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts difficulties in your life. Because that's his way of getting you back on the right path. This is first. He does that, he does that, he does that, he continues like that. After a while, every time he puts that difficulty, you might think, why does God dislike me? Why does he hate me? The Quran says, لَعَلَّهُمْ يَضَّرَّعُونَ. We only put that difficulty there so that they would come back to the right path. We don't hate anybody. Try and bring them to the right path. So principle number one. Principle number two, if he continues like this, where the bad things happening in his life don't wake him up, then we open the doors of blessings to him. And now life becomes super easy while he continues to disobey God. This is not for a person who disobeys and repents. This is for a person who does what? Green light. Just continue to disobey God. Yes? This is principle number two. Then what happens? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we open the doors of our blessings upon these people. And they don't realize. They assume, yeah, life is going well and everything is perfect. Principle number three, that is when our punishment comes. And the Quran says, وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَىٰ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا. If only these people had set aside their arrogance and they had believed in us, لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. We would have opened the doors of our blessings onto them from the heavens and the earth. They could have had the blessings in this world and in the next world. But what did they decide? They decided punishment in this world and the next world for themselves. So Shu'ayb is walking away and he sees God's punishment coming on his people. He said, قَدْ أَبْلَغْتُكُمْ. I told you so many times. But you didn't listen. فَكَيْفَ آسَى عَلَى قَوْمٍ كَافِرِينَ. How am I supposed to feel bad for a people who I went back to them over and over and over and over and over again? What can I do? The human being has free will at the end of the day. If someone decides to live his life like this, that's between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Shu'ayb is walking away and he says, how can I look at this and be sad? Because at the end of the day, how many times did I speak to these people? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not expect for you and I to be perfect. And I'll say this as the final line, as the final takeaway from these Ramadan lectures, as tonight is our final lecture. Inshallah, Thursday night we'll have the Chandrat's program. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not expect you and I to be perfect. He expects you and I to try our best, and that when we fall short, we come back and repent. And I ask you, is that too much that God is asking us for? That's very little that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us for. The path to heaven is 2 steps. Number 1, is try your best to obey Him. And number 2, when you fall short, say, I'm sorry and repent. Is there a more merciful God than this? That's all He's asking for. And if you do that, inshallah, your path to heaven will be an open path. Let us take a moment to recite Surah Al-Fatiha for all of your marhumin and marhumat, especially the